cold brew doesn't fix an interstellar crisis, but it helps. Ainsley Webb sat in the observation deck, mug in hand, watching a dozen alien warlords lose their collective minds over a broken spreadsheet. Humanity wasn't conquering the galaxy with lasers. We were doing it with middle management. Fluorescent lights hummed with a low, annoying frequency inside the orbital command center. Ainsley Webb took a slow, deliberate sip from his ceramic mug. Black coffee, Colombian roast. No sugar, no cream. Just bitter, hot caffeine scalding its way down his throat. Down in the central pit of the Coalition embassy, utter chaos reigned. 6 different species of highly advanced, spacefaring diplomats were currently engaged in what could only be described as a synchronized meltdown. Blue emergency strobes painted their alien features in frantic bursts of azure light. Tentacles lashed against reinforced glass. Chitinous mandibles clicked in rapid-fire staccato. A particularly tall avian delegate, representing an empire that spanned 3 star systems, was currently shedding grey feathers all over the polished linoleum floor, flapping its vestigial wings in an undeniable display of sheer terror. Ainsley rested his elbows on the observation railing. He didn't blink. He just watched. "You're enjoying this," a voice muttered. Emily Stanton leaned against the railing beside him, a datapad clutched against her chest. She looked exhausted. Deep purple bags hung under her eyes, a testament to 72 hours of continuous negotiations. Her uniform was rumpled, the collar frayed, but her gaze was sharp as cut glass. "Enjoying is a strong word, Emily," Ainsley replied, his voice barely above a gravelly whisper. "I'd say I'm observing a profound cultural exchange. They think the galaxy is ending. They think a supply chain disruption is the end of the galaxy," Ainsley corrected. He gestured with his mug toward the massive holographic display dominating the center of the room. On the screen, a web of glowing transit routes hung suspended in the air. Right in the middle, a blinking red sector indicated a Class 4 ion storm. It was massive, spanning a few light-years, sitting directly across the primary hyperspace lane, connecting the Coalition's core worlds to their outer mining colonies. For the aliens, this was a death sentence. Their entire economic model relied on just-in-time delivery, a highly fragile, tightly wound system optimized for zero redundancy. A single blockage meant an immediate cascade failure. To them, a blocked route meant their cargo ships would drop out of hyperspace, run out of fuel, and drift until the crews starved. It meant the foundries on their home worlds would go silent in 3 days. It meant riots, collapse, and ruin. To Ainsley, it was Tuesday. "Have they tried going around it?" Ainsley asked, taking another sip. "I suggested that," Emily sighed, rubbing her temples. "The ambassador told me the algorithms dictate the optimal route, and the optimal route is currently blocked. Therefore, no route exists. They don't have human navigators. Everything is automated. Their AI calculates the path of least resistance and literally shuts down if it encounters an unquantifiable variable." Ainsley shook his head. "Advanced species. Masters of faster-than-light travel. Capable of building Dyson swarms and harnessing the power of black holes. But strip away their perfect algorithms, throw a wrench into their pristine machinations, and they reverted to panicked animals. They had engineered the human element entirely out of their society, viewing intuition as a flaw. Down in the pit, the avian delegate shrieked. The translation collar around its neck crackled to life, rendering the alien panic into flat, robotic English. "The shipments of raw deuterium will fail to arrive. The fusion grids will collapse. We must prepare for planetary evacuation. Initiate the morning protocols." Ainsley chuckled, a dry, raspy sound. Morning protocols. They're already holding a funeral for their power grid. It's been 12 minutes. It's not funny, Ainsley, Emily snapped, though a tired smirk tugged at the corner of her mouth. If their fusion grids go down, the coalition splinters. We lose our trading partners. Earth gets isolated again. General Brooks is threatening to send the Fifth Fleet in to tow their cargo ships manually, which will completely drain our own fuel reserves. Brooks is an idiot, Ainsley said, turning his gaze back to the frantic floor. He thinks you can shoot an ion storm or intimidate it. He's going to march down there, scream about human resilience, and order a suicidal rescue mission just to look tough. Right on cue, the heavy blast doors at the rear of the command center slid open. General Richard Brooks stormed onto the deck. He was a man carved from granite and stubbornness, wearing a uniform so heavily starched it looked like it could deflect small arms fire. The medals on his chest clinked softly as he marched toward Ainsley and Emily. His face was a mask of rigid military determination, jaw clenched, eyes scanning the chaotic scene below with absolute disdain. "Report, Stanton!" Brooks barked, stopping beside them. He didn't look at Ainsley. The military types rarely looked at the civilian logistics contractors. "Complete systemic gridlock, General," Emily answered, pulling up a fresh schematic on her datapad. "The coalition fleet is holding position just outside the storm's perimeter. 30,000 megatons of deuterium sitting idle. The automated pilots refuse to engage manual overrides. The alien delegates are currently drafting a formal declaration of economic surrender." Brooks sneered. "Surrender to weather. Cowards! I've authorized the deployment of the Fifth Fleet. We'll attach towing cables to their haulers and drag them through the storm ourselves." Ainsley paused mid-sip. He slowly lowered his mug, turning his head to look at the general. "You're going to drag 30,000 megatons of highly volatile, unshielded fusion fuel through a Class 4 ion storm using steel cables," Ainsley stated, his tone completely flat. Brooks bristled, his eyes narrowing. "I'm going to show these aliens what human grit looks like, Webb. We don't sit around crying when the road gets bumpy. No, we usually just blow ourselves up," Ainsley replied. "An ion storm fires electromagnetic discharges at roughly 1,000,000 volts per second. Deuterium is stable until you introduce extreme electromagnetic shearing. You drag those ships through that storm. You won't just destroy the fleet. You'll ignite a localized supernova. You'll vaporize the entire sector." "Do you have a better idea, pencil pusher?" Brooks growled, stepping closer, trying to use his sheer physical mass to intimidate Ainsley. Ainsley didn't flinch. He looked down into his coffee. The dark surface rippled slightly from the vibrations of the general's heavy boots. "Yeah," Ainsley said quietly. "Call a trucker." Silence stretched across the observation deck. Below them, the frantic screeching of the alien delegates continued unabated, a symphony of bureaucratic despair. But up here, the air had gone entirely still. "Excuse me," Brooks demanded, his voice dropping an octave. "A trucker," Ainsley repeated. He set his mug down on the railing with a quiet clink. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a battered physical notepad. Not a datapad. Real, dead tree paper. "Emily, pull up the regional sector map, not the hyperspace lane map. The old colonial mapping data from before we joined the coalition." Emily tapped her screen, swiping away the glowing, perfect lines of the alien transit routes. The holographic projection shifted, replacing the neat mathematical grid with a messy, cluttered star chart. It was filled with asteroid belts, rogue planetoids, and unregistered gravity wells. Ainsley pointed a pen at a dark, seemingly empty void of space, roughly 2 parsecs to the left of the ion storm. The coalition AI calculates routes based on a maximum speed variable. It wants the fastest, straightest line, Ainsley explained, his voice losing its cynical edge, replaced by the calm, rhythmic cadence of a man who spent 20 years organizing intercontinental freight on Earth. If the straight line is blocked, it stops. But humans don't drive in straight lines. We drive where the road takes us. "There is no road there," Brooks said, crossing his massive arms. "That's the Kessel Drift. It's unnavigable. Too much space debris. The gravity currents from the nearby binary star pull ships off course. It's a navigational dead zone." "For an algorithm, sure," Ainsley said. "An algorithm tries to predict every single pebble in an asteroid belt. It overthinks. It gets overwhelmed by the data and shuts down. But a human pilot doesn't calculate every rock. A human pilot just looks out the window and steers." Emily's eyes widened slightly as she caught on. "You want to manually pilot the cargo ships through the drift?" "No," Ainsley corrected. "I want to manually pilot our ships through the drift, carrying their cargo," Brooks scoffed. "Our haulers don't have the capacity to carry 30,000 megatons of deuterium." "Not in one trip, no," Ainsley conceded. He flipped a page on his notepad. "But the Coalition doesn't need 30,000 megatons today. They need it to keep their fusion grids from shutting down in 3 days. That's their immediate panic. They run a just-in-time economy. They don't have stockpiles. If we can get just 500 megatons to their capital world by tomorrow morning, the grids stay online." The panic stops. They realize the galaxy isn't ending, and it gives the storm time to dissipate. 500 megatons, Emily muttered, typing furiously on her datapad. "We have the Independent Shipping Guild stationed at Outpost 4, the Roughnecks. They fly retrofitted mining barges. No AI navigation, purely analog thrusters. They haul ore through asteroid fields for a living." "Exactly," Ainsley smiled, a genuine, rare expression. "They don't use algorithms. They drink terrible synthetic coffee. They listen to heavy metal, and they drive by the seat of their pants. The Kessel Drift won't scare them. It's just a bumpy back road." Brooks was staring at the holographic map, his brow furrowed in deep concentration. The military man inside him hated the lack of order, hated the chaotic, messy reality of independent space truckers. But the tactician in him saw the undeniable logic. "You want to offload the fuel from the Coalition fleet, load it onto civilian scrap haulers, and fly it through an uncharted debris field, manually," Brooks summarized. "I want to do a transload," Ainsley corrected. "It's basic logistics. The highway is blocked by a blizzard. You don't take an 18-wheeler through the snowbank. You unpack the truck, load the cargo onto a fleet of off-road pickup trucks, and take the dirt roads around the mountain." "The Coalition won't allow it," Emily interjected, looking down at the frantic aliens. "They view our independent haulers as primitive, unsafe. The avian delegate practically had a stroke when I told him humans still touch steering wheels." Ainsley picked up his coffee mug. He took another long sip. The liquid was lukewarm now, but it still had bite. "Let me talk to them," Ainsley said. He didn't wait for permission. Ainsley pushed away from the railing and headed for the heavy blast doors leading down to the pit. Brooks and Emily exchanged a look before hurrying after him. The descent into the embassy pit felt like stepping into an asylum. The noise was deafening. Translators blared warnings in a dozen languages. The air smelled like ozone and terrified alien sweat. Ainsley walked straight through the center of the room, parting the sea of panicked diplomats. He didn't rush. He moved with the slow, irritating calm of a man who was getting paid by the hour. He approached the main console, where the avian delegate was frantically pecking at a keyboard, trying to initiate some sort of planetary shutdown sequence. Ainsley reached out and gently closed the holographic terminal. The avian delegate froze, its large black eyes snapping to Ainsley. It stood at least 7 feet tall, its feathers ruffled in extreme distress. "Human," the translator collar buzzed. "Cease your interference. We are calculating the optimal distribution of emergency rations for the surviving populace." "There isn't going to be a surviving populace," Ainsley said calmly, "because there isn't going to be an apocalypse. I need you to authorize an immediate cargo transfer to human civilian vessels." The delegate stared at him, tilting its head in a jerky, bird-like motion. "Civilian vessels? Your independent haulers? They lack quantum probability navigation cores. They are statistically guaranteed to experience fatal collision in an unmapped sector." "They have windows," Ainsley replied. "They'll look outside and avoid hitting things." A murmur rippled through the assembled diplomats. Several of the scaled delegates hissed in disbelief. "Intuition is a mathematical fallacy," the avian snapped. "The margin of error is too high. The cargo will be lost." "The cargo is already lost," Ainsley pointed out, tapping the side of his mug. "Your ships are sitting idle. Your grids shut down in 72 hours. Mathematically, your probability of failure right now is 100%. You are guaranteed to fail." The avian delegate hesitated, its mandibles clicking nervously. "I am offering you a non-zero chance of survival," Ainsley continued, stepping closer. "Yes, the human pilots might crash. Yes, it's messy. It is completely unoptimized. But right now, your perfect system is killing you. You built a machine so flawless, it doesn't know how to handle a pothole. We don't have perfect machines. We have duct tape, stubbornness, and a high tolerance for risk." General Brooks stepped up beside Ainsley, standing tall, presenting a united human front. "My military will escort the convoy to the edge of the drift. After that, it's up to the civilian haulers." The avian looked from Ainsley to Brooks, then up at the giant red storm on the projection. The panic was slowly receding, replaced by a cold, desperate calculation. "How much fuel can your truckers deliver?" "Enough to keep the lights on," Ainsley said. "But you have to sign the release order right now. Every minute you spend crying about the math is a minute those pilots could be flying." The alien stared at Ainsley for a long, agonizing moment. Then, with a slow, defeated droop of its feathers, it raised a clawed hand and pressed its biometric seal against the main console. The authorization flashed green. Ainsley nodded. He turned and looked up at Emily, who was already on the comms, furiously dialing the Outpost 4 shipping guild. "Get them moving, Em," Ainsley called out. "Tell them it's double overtime." He took one last sip of his coffee, finally draining the mug. The galaxy wasn't saved by superior firepower or godlike intelligence. It was saved because humans were the only species reckless enough to take a detour. Static crackled through the observation deck's primary audio channels, cutting through the lingering tension. Ainsley Webb leaned forward, resting his forearms on the cold metal railing. Below him, the coalition pit had gone eerily silent. Alien diplomats from 6 different star systems stood frozen, their large, multifaceted eyes glued to the central holographic display. On the screen, 24 blinking green dots detached themselves from the massive, immobile coalition fleet. Those green dots were human scrap haulers, retrofitted mining barges, held together by stubborn welds and sheer audacity, now loaded with enough volatile deuterium to glass a small moon. "Convoy actual to command," a gravelly voice echoed from the overhead speakers. The audio was terrible, laced with cosmic background radiation and the rhythmic thrum of massive analog engines. "This is Miller. We got the juice. Detaching umbilicals now. Tell the birds their shiny ships are safe." Emily Stanton tapped her earpiece, her fingers flying across her datapad to stabilize the frequency. "Copy that, Jackson. Telemetry is locked. You are cleared for approach to the Kessel Drift. Maintain formation." "Formation?" Jackson Miller barked a laugh that sounded like rocks in a blender. "Stanton, you're looking at a bunch of asymmetrical bricks with thrusters strapped to the back. We don't do formations. We do a general stampede. See you on the other side. Miller out. Down in the pit, the avian delegate trembled. Its translation collar hummed as it processed the exchange. A stampede? This is madness. Cargo of this volatility requires a synchronized harmonic transit matrix. They are communicating with unregulated sound waves. Why are they not using the central algorithmic hive mind? Ainsley took an empty coffee mug from the railing and rolled it between his palms. Because hive minds don't know how to curse when a thruster misfires. Miller's crew runs on spite and adrenaline. The algorithms would shut down the moment they saw the telemetry from those engines. General Richard Brooks stood rigid beside Ainsley, his arms crossed tightly over his chest. His military posture never wavered, but a faint, reluctant smirk played at the corner of his mouth. Brooks despised chaos, but he respected results. And right now, these civilian roughnecks were the only assets moving on the board. The holographic projection shifted. The neat, mathematical grid of the alien transit routes vanished entirely. In its place, a chaotic topography of the Kessel Drift materialized. It was a jagged, ugly mess of rogue asteroids, magnetic anomalies, and unpredictable gravity eddies pulling from a nearby binary star. To a coalition navigation computer, it looked like a solid wall of death. "Entering the drift zone now," Emily announced, her voice tight. Every eye in the room tracked the 24 green blips. The human ships didn't form a neat line. They scattered. The alien delegates gasped in unison. A chorus of horrified clicks, hisses, and synthetic translation warnings flooded the pit. "They are breaking sequence. Trajectory decay imminent. Probability of fatal collision approaching 99%. Ainsley watched the screen. The blips were dodging, weaving, and sliding through the dense asteroid field. It wasn't elegant. It was messy, reactionary, and completely terrifying. But they were moving forward. "They aren't breaking sequence," Ainsley muttered, mostly to himself. "They're reading the terrain. You can't program an algorithm to feel the subtle pull of a gravity eddy on a hull. You have to be sitting in the pilot's seat. You have to feel the metal vibrating. Ship 7 is drifting too close to a magnetic anomaly," Brooks barked, his tactical mind kicking into overdrive. "Stanton, warn them." "I can't," Emily replied, her fingers white-knuckling her datapad. "Ion interference from the drift is scrambling our outgoing signals. They're flying blind. Only short-range comms are working between the ships." A burst of static erupted from the speakers, startling the aliens below. "Hey, Ortiz, pull your nose up. You got a rogue rock about the size of a hab block drifting into your blind spot." "I see it, Miller. Venting port thrusters. Drifting left." "Don't drift too far. You'll catch the gravity well. Feather the primary intake. Just feather it." "Copy. Feathering." On the screen, 2 green dots nearly merged, passing within a terrifyingly small margin of error. Then they separated, continuing their chaotic dance through the debris. The avian delegate was clutching its feathered head, rocking back and forth on its long, stilt-like legs. Feathering. What is feathering? There is no mathematical variable for feathering a primary intake valve. It is either open or closed. This defies mechanical logic. Ainsley leaned over the railing. It means tapping the manual override just enough to get a burst of speed without flooding the chamber. It's not logic. It's a feeling. A feeling cannot pilot a spacecraft. It's doing a hell of a lot better than your computers. Brooks shot back, his voice booming across the command center. "Look at the board." The avian delegate forced itself to look. The alien diplomats crowded around the projection, their collective panic morphing into a state of stunned disbelief. The 24 green blips were more than halfway through the drift. They were moving at a speed that defied the coalition's safety parameters, burning cheap, dirty fuel and relying purely on human reaction time. They were threading needles that algorithms deemed impossible, approaching the binary star's primary gravity shear, Emily warned. The purple bags under her eyes seemed darker in the glowing light of the holotable. This is the tightest part of the drift. If they don't hit the exit vector at the exact right angle, the gravity shear will tear those barges apart. With that much deuterium on board, it won't be a crash. It'll be a localized sun. Ainsley stopped rolling the empty mug. He set it down. For the first time in 3 days, his heart rate ticked up. Tension thickened the air in the command center. Down in the pit, the aliens had stopped clicking and hissing. Total silence descended upon the diplomats. They were witnessing something entirely alien to their culture, the raw, uncalculated embrace of survival instinct. "Miller, this is Stanton," Emily tried again, shouting into her headset. "Can you read me? You need to adjust your approach vector by 3 degrees. The gravity shear is shifting." Static answered her, just a wall of cosmic white noise. "They can't hear you," Brooks said quietly. His jaw was locked tight. "They have to see it themselves." On the holographic display, a massive, swirling red zone represented the gravity shear. It was an invisible blender in the middle of space. The 24 green dots were speeding directly toward it. "Come on," Ainsley whispered. "Look out the window, Miller. Read the space." Suddenly, the short-range comms punched through the static, echoing through the observation deck. "All right, boys and girls," Miller's voice rasped. "The navcomp's just completely flatlined. We are entirely analog from here on out. I can see the shear up ahead. It's bending the starlight. Looks like a funhouse mirror." "We coming in too hot, Miller?" Ortiz asked, her voice strained against the G-forces. "Way too hot," Miller confirmed casually, as if he were discussing the weather. "If we try to brake now, the inertia will snap the cargo clamps. We lose the fuel. We lose the payday." Down below, the avian delegate moaned softly, a sound of absolute despair. They are calculating their financial compensation in the face of imminent vaporization. The human mind is profoundly broken. "So what's the play, boss?" Another trucker chimed in. "We don't brake," Miller said. "We ride the rim. We use the gravity shear to slingshot us out. Kill your main engines on my mark. Let the gravity grab you, then punch the starboard thrusters to break the orbit. It's going to rattle your teeth loose, so bite down." Emily's datapad beeped furiously. "General, that maneuver, it's not in any flight manual. The structural integrity of those barges isn't rated for a slingshot maneuver around a binary shear." Brooks didn't blink. "They don't care about the manual, Stanton. Watch. Mark!" Miller roared over the radio. On the screen, all 24 green blips suddenly decelerated, their primary engine signatures vanishing. They were caught. The massive red swirling zone of the gravity shear grabbed the human ships, pulling them into a terrifyingly rapid orbit. The blips spun around the edge of the shear, gaining massive velocity. The telemetry data on Emily's screen turned entirely red. Structural warnings screamed from her datapad. "Hold it!" Miller grunted, his voice vibrating violently through the comms. "Hold it! Wait for the alignment!" The green dots blurred into a solid line on the display, whipping around the invisible gravity well. "Punch it!" 24 massive analog thrusters ignited simultaneously. The explosive burst of kinetic energy tore the ships out of the shear's grip. The green dots shot out of the Kessel drift like bullets escaping a barrel. They cleared the red zone, streaking past the outer edge of the asteroid field and breaking out into the clean, empty vacuum of the Coalition's core space. "Yee-haw!" Miller breathed over the comms, followed by a wet cough. "Stanton, you copy?" Emily exhaled a breath she felt like she had been holding for an hour. "I read you, Miller. Telemetry shows you are clear of the drift. Cargo signatures are stable. All 24 ships accounted for." "Told you," Miller chuckled. "Just a bumpy back road. We're setting course for the capital world. ETA is 4 hours. Tell the squids to get their checkbooks ready. In the coalition pit, absolute pandemonium erupted. It wasn't the frantic, terrified screeching from an hour ago. It was a chaotic, confused uproar of relief. The diplomats were hugging each other or wrapping tentacles around each other, depending on their respective anatomies. The avian delegate stood completely still. It looked up at the observation deck, directly at Ainsley. They survived. The probability was less than 1%. Yet, they survived. And the fuel is intact. The grids will stay online, Ainsley said, projecting his voice down into the pit. Your economy survives. Your planets don't starve. The storm will pass in a few days, and your algorithms can go back to drawing perfect straight lines. The alien slowly bowed its head, a gesture of profound, bewildered respect. We will authorize double the requested compensation. We do not understand your methods, human. Your reliance on instinct over calculation is terrifying. But today, it is effective. Ainsley nodded once. He turned away from the railing. The crisis was averted. The supply chain was moving again. Brooks finally let his arms drop to his sides. He looked at Ainsley, a grudging respect in his rigid gaze. Good call, Webb. It was a massive gamble, but it paid off. You saved the coalition fleet. I didn't save anything, General, Ainsley said, adjusting his coat. The roughnecks in those flying dump trucks saved it. I just know how to read a map. Emily slumped against the control console, rubbing her eyes. I need to sleep for a week. The paperwork for this transload is going to be a nightmare. The Independent Guild is going to invoice us for structural damage, hazard pay, and probably emotional distress. Let them, Ainsley said. He walked toward the blast doors leading out of the command center. The fluorescent lights overhead hummed their annoying, steady tune. The coalition is paying double. We'll cover the invoice, take our 20% management fee, and everyone goes home happy. Where are you going? Brooks asked, frowning. We need to debrief command. We need to formulate a long-term logistics strategy in case another ion storm blocks a primary route. Ainsley didn't stop walking. The heavy doors slid open with a pneumatic hiss. He stepped out into the quiet corridor, leaving the chaos of interstellar politics and algorithmic failure behind him. You guys handle the debrief, Ainsley called back over his shoulder. I've been staring at a glowing spreadsheet for 72 hours. I'm going to the cafeteria. He held up his empty ceramic mug. I need more coffee. Thank you so much for joining me on this interstellar detour. If you loved seeing human grit outsmart alien perfection, hit that like button, subscribe, and share this video with a friend who appreciates a good sci-fi HFY story. Drop a comment below. What's your favorite way humanity bends the rules in science fiction? See you in the next one.